A few months back I did a video on some of my favourite PS1 fighting games, and there's still a bunch of fighting games I want to talk about on the PS1, so I thought I'd make a sequel. And I thought I'd bring along fellow Englishman, YouTuber and all-round gentleman Roggor for the ride, as he's somewhat an expert on PS1 stuff. So prepare for the crossover nobody's been waiting for.
Before you ask, yeah, blackmail was involved in this, but for the PS1, I'll put up with a lot of shit, especially the awkward era of 2D to 3D fighting games the little grey box covers. Be it a Tekken to Toe Ball, I've played them all, and I suck at each of them.
So with Rog along for the ride,
Let's talk some PS1.
what do you think you're doing?
Finishing the intro so you don't blather on for 40 years?
Ugh, Rog, I can't believe you would try to undermine me like this on my channel of all places!
Just trying to make things a little bit more wholesome, you know, like the good life.
No! This is not the bloody good life! Felicity, Treacle Kendall, and Richard, sugar-flavoured snot Briars! They just reinforce the myth that everyone in Britain is a middle-class eccentric, and I hate them!
Can I finish the intro now?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Let's talk some PS1.
Fighting games.
Bloody Roar is a furry's wet dream brought to life. It's a fighting game where you play as people that can for some reason transform into weird human-animal hybrids, cause why not, I guess. I bet there's a lot of porn on the internet for this game. I'm not even gonna check.
It's the internet. It's born of everything.
Well, I ain't looking up that shit. I'm gonna get a cup of tea. Oh. You looked it up, didn't you?
Get out of my brain!
And this game might have one of the most metal intros in fighting game history. It's honestly up there with Soul Blade's intro. And all the music in this game is metal as fuck, with roaring solos and bits that honestly sound like they should be on a later era Rush album. So goddamn awesome. Then we're dumped onto the main menu and there's the usual modes you'd expect from a fighter of this era. You've got arcade mode, versus mode, and beast rave? Sadly, it's nothing that exciting. It's just a mode that you can activate in combat that makes your character faster. There's quite a nice variety of characters to choose from. There's 8 in total, which doesn't sound like a lot, but they all play very differently, so that makes up for it. My favourites have to be Bakaru, the Mole Ninja, and Greg, the Gorilla, who I like to call Babraham Lincoln.
I want to take you to a gay bar!
In every battle in Bloody Roar, both you and your opponents start off in your human forms, which are a little bit weaker than your animal form, and you also have less moves to work with. When you transform into your beast form, your speed and attack power increase, and you get a whole extra button of attacks. You can transform when this meter under the health meter starts flashing, and this mechanic really adds a layer of strategy to the battles. Once you've transformed, this beast meter becomes a health meter for staying in your beast form, because as you take damage this meter will get lower and lower until BAM, you're back in your human form again. And I love this layer of the game as it really makes you think about when the perfect time to transform is, because if you transform too early your opponent could knock you out of beast mode and have a basically full meter of their own, leaving you majorly on the back foot. It really makes this game stand out from the other fighters on the PS1. There's only 2 buttons for attacking, a punch and a kick button, and the extra button you get when you go into beast mode. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're playing the game it really doesn't feel like it's that limited, as there's loads of combos you can pull off. And every character has their own set of special moves that are mostly pulled off by doing the old Street Fighter staple of using quarter circle forwards and quarter circle backs. And sure, this is a bit derivative, but I can't really hold it against the game. It's a fighting game standard and tons of games rip this off. And I just love the feel of blocking in this game. It's using the holding back as block setup, and I've always preferred this over having a block button. It just helps in making the whole game feel fast. One of my favourite little touches in this game is the ringing out mechanic. There's these barriers that surround the ring like it was a UFC match, but if the walls take enough damage, the characters can go flying out of the ring, and there's nothing more satisfying than getting the win by smashing your opponent through a wall into the abyss. This game honestly does borrow the feel of a few games, but it mixes its influences together so well that it becomes its own unique thing. And it doesn't hurt that for the time the graphics are pretty damn awesome and the music is metal as fuck. But as with most fighters of this era, it's a bit light on interesting game modes, but the sequel to this game would fix that. Bloody Roar 2! A perfect sequel that basically took everything the first game did and just improved on it. And the only step back is, there's no metal as fuck intro anymore. I mean, the intro sequence kinda sucks, but at least the music is still metal, I guess. Bloody Roar 2 took a pretty bold step for a sequel and basically scrapped half of the characters from the first game, which to be honest is a pretty good move in my opinion, because the characters they've added are way more memorable. I do miss Abraham Lincoln though. But some of the weird new additions make up for the loss of my beloved Abraham Lincoln. My two favourites have to be Stun, the insect, and Buzima, the chameleon. It don't matter what game it is, I always love the bad guys and the monsters. The combat remains pretty much the same as in the first game, except for this time there's these finisher style moves that you can pull off, that are like something you would get in Marvel vs Capcom. And these are pretty cool, the screen goes all grid based and you completely fuck your enemy up. But as a trade-off, whenever you pull off these moves you turn back into your human form, so you've got to be damn sure you're going to hit before you use it. But other than that, the combat is the same fast and furious fun that the first game was, but in many ways it's just a little bit better. But the main new addition in this sequel is the inclusion of an actual story mode. Now you might not think that's a big deal, but back in the day fighting games never had a proper story mode. Sure, it's not exactly the most in-depth thing ever, it's just a set of battles that are connected by little, almost visual novel styled scenes. And it helps flesh out the game's world and lets you actually know what's going on in the story of this series in the actual game instead of in the manual. Every character has their own little storyline and they all take place at roughly the same time, so sometimes when you're doing something in someone else's storyline it'll overlap with something that happened in another person's story, but it will obviously be from another person's perspective. Whenever you start a new story mode run with a character, you get this intro that's a few screens of text that explains the backstory of the game. Basically, some corporation figures out how to turn people into furries so they can exploit them for money. And the furries start to get very annoyed about this, so they decide to band together and make a resistance group, and they defeat the evil corporation. But this lets the wider public know of their existence, and they of course want them all killed because they're monsters. So a lot of the furries decide they're gonna kill everyone.
Wait, so they took the plot of X-Men and basically changed all the mutants into furries?
Yeah, pretty much.
No wonder Hugh Jackman wants to leave.
Even though the actual overarching story isn't the greatest, I still do really love some of the fun, cheesy writing for the character storylines. Unsurprisingly, my favourite is of course Buzima. He's so over the top and totally evil and campy at the same time. How can you not love this guy? Let's just go for his storyline because it's absolutely glorious. It starts off by telling you that after many experiments making people into zoanthropes, or however you're supposed to fucking say it, he decided to turn himself into one because, you know, he's crazy and looks like he should be fronting a 90s pop punk band. He basically goes around knocking women out so he can take them back to his lab and do medical experiments on them.
Oh, so that's what he told the court.
I don't know what you're insinuating, Rog. Buzima is a man of science and a gentleman.
Right.
And then he basically proceeds to beat up pretty much the whole cast of the game, and then he crowns himself the new leader of the Beast Liberation Front, and he vows to destroy the world with his creations. But then all the people he beat up in the course of the game gang up to kick the shit out of him, and I love the little fourth wall-breaking joke Buzima makes here. He says, "Curse you for selecting continue, it wasn't fair of you." So fucking silly, I love it. And then the gang of course beat the shit out of him, and that's how his story mode ends, with him on the floor severely beaten. I just love that, it's so stupid yet awesome. Not all of the storylines are this silly, but most of them are entertaining, even if it isn't the best written thing ever, and it just adds something to this game. Bloody Roar 2 is a really fun fighting game that definitely deserves to be brought up more when people are talking about great fighting games.
One of the most unique fighting games ever, Bushido Blade saw two Samurai Ninja Burt Reynolds impersonators find a game with no health bars. One stab to the head or the heart, and you be dead. Makes sense, really. You didn't have many characters, a common aspect of this age of gaming, but with 8 weapons to choose from, each character having hidden stats, preferred weapons and secret moves with said weapons, there was more variety than there seems to be. Naturally, when the first fight started, and instead of trying to stab me, my opponent instead tried to talk me to death, I immediately ran up to him and introduced his innards to the concept of daylight. Despite this completely sensible approach to a life or death fight, after the cave match I was greeted with this screen. Or old Japan's way of saying, don't be such a little scrub, bitch. I was then promptly kicked back to the main menu. In order to actually complete the game, you must follow the code of Bushido. Oh, I see what you did there. No backstabs, no stabbing a man when he's down, and no stabbing idiots who talk instead of fight until they've had a good nagadu, you naughty little It also has the best pause ever. There was only one sequel, Bushido Blade 2, which was never released in Europe. Whilst it improved the graphics and arguably the controls, the changes to the body damage system, adding generic ninjas to chew through before each proper fight, and the removal of the interconnected areas, got a meh enough reception to kill the series. There have been some spiritual sequels, some recent indie games, mainly the Kingo series on the Xbox 360. It was alright, I guess? The only real stain on this underrated classic is the story. Basically, your guy doesn't like the boss of your assassin dojo going all evil and stuff from a cursed sword, so you leg it. Your classmates are sent to hunt you down and you therefore brutally murder them. You are an assassin after all. So far, so already been done in several thousand animes. This is the big old bullshit sandwich.
In search of the only way out through the castle tower.
This sodding line maybe waits hours running around this boxy castle looking for an escape route that doesn't exist. Biggest line gaming.
Now come on, it can't be the worst lie ever. Peter Molyneux exists, EA exists, Aliens Colonial Marines exists, No Man's Sky.
Best pause ever. Also, the boss that uses a gun can suck my dick.
Rival schools united by fate. Now, I don't know why we're talking about a classic post-hardcore album in the middle of this PS1 fighting games video, but we are for some reason.
What are you doing?
Talking about rival schools united by fate. It's a great album.
But this is a video about PS1 fighting games, not post-hardcore albums, so do your job and review a video game. Good Lord Satan, I swear you dropped on your head as a kid.
Have you met my new pet? I've named him Roggor Jr.
Why did I agree to do this video?
Rival schools united by fate. The PS1 game, not the 2001 post-hardcore album, is a very underrated and somewhat forgotten PS1 fighting game made by the kings of fighting games, Capcom. And as you might be able to guess from the title of the game, it centers around a bunch of different Japanese schools that are at war with each other because they've been attacked by some mystery evil school. And they of course try and figure out who's been attacking their school by doing the very rational thing of going around randomly picking fights with people from different schools to figure out which school is behind it all. Because you know, that's how investigation works. I've seen every episode of Poirot. He just goes around bopping people until he solves the murder. And if it's good enough for Poirot, it's good enough for this game. I think the main problem this game has going against it is that the characters are just so unmemorable. You'd think Capcom, the people that did Street Fighter, would be able to design some memorable characters, but they just haven't here.
What are you talking about, Jake? How could you forget Volleyball Girl, Panland Balrog, Football Lad, Guile, The Meth Years, Baseball Man, Tesco Value Skullomania, Sakura with slightly more hair, and I'm proving your point, aren't I?
Rival Schools is for some reason spread across 2 discs. The first disc has the story mode and the arcade mode of the game, and not much else to be honest with you. And the second disc, the Evolution disc, has the arcade mode and a few normal extra modes that you would get in most fighting games. Apparently there was some weird, quite in-depth dating sim mode on the second disc in the Japanese version of the game, but it never made it over here. Mainly because of how much work it would take to get all the dialogue translated. Also because Japan is weird. It's kind of a shame really, because I probably would have got a load of golden jokes out of that mode. Oh well. Like Bloody Roar 2, this game actually has a story mode, which for me always gets bonus points because it gives you more of a reason to play through the game as the different characters. I mean, by today's standards, the story mode is pretty weak as it's just some loosely thrown together cutscenes that join the fights together. It never really gets more complicated than, did you guys attack us? I don't need to wait for the answer, let's just fight to find out.
It's always worked for me.
And that's the reason no one talks to you.
One of the reasons.
Occasionally they'll use the old brainwashing trope that's used in fighting game stories quite a lot to give the characters a reason to fight. I mean hell, Bloody Roar 2 used the exact same plot device at one point. But most of the characters' storylines are pretty much the same. They go beat up a few people from the other schools until they find out who's really behind it. Then they fight the big baddie at the end and that's it. And I'm going to be honest, it's still fun playing through with all the characters, even if the story is about as deep as a spider's piss puddle. The actual fighting in this game is pretty much what you would expect from Capcom in this era of their history. The game essentially plays like a mix of Street Fighter EX and the Capcom vs Marvel series. The only real difference here is that they've taken away 2 attack buttons, so instead of the usual 6 attacks there's only 4, but it honestly still feels like you've got as many choices and moves as you would in any other Capcom game. So you'll obviously be using Hadouken-like movements for specials, and there's of course super special moves like you would get in any other Capcom game. While I did say a lot of the characters in this game aren't exactly the most memorable ever, I still did have a lot of fun playing as all the different characters. They all have their own unique feel. And a lot of them just feel silly and gimmicky, and I like that about them. I mean, you have a guy whose special move is throwing flaming footballs at people. You can't really go wrong with that. This game just feels like it knows how campy it is, and I appreciate that. It's a real shame that this game gets forgotten about, because it honestly is a really fun game that deserves more attention than it gets.
Thrill Kill is known for 3 things. It got the Pearl Clutcher's knickers in such a twist it was cancelled before release despite being 99% complete. It was the first game the ESRB rated adults only for violence instead of sexy times, and in this game you can play as a midget on stilts that beats up a dominatrix. I am not joking. Since it was canned before release and was basically finished, Thrill Kill has become one of the most widely played unreleased games ever. And if you're thinking whilst looking at this, gee, that sounds a lot like Super Smash Bros. Yes, that is what you sound like to people. Thrill Kill actually did the 4 players in one room beating each other in tomato paste nearly a year before Mario decided to kick Pikachu's head in. It didn't do it very well, but it still did it. It even has the Smash Brothers mechanic of building up a meter rather than losing a health bar. This time, however, after you've built up the bar, your character gets the mother of all headaches and you can grab an opponent to instantly perform a Mortal Kombat style fatality. This can be a bit of an arse as you can try and dodge the powered up Psycho until their meter runs out, but the stages are so small it's basically impossible. Also, all 3 opponents have to be eliminated this way per match, so you can fatality the first 2 and still get twatted by the last guy having to do the entire round again. The only thing this game had going for it was the shock factor, and Mortal Kombat had beaten it to the spine ripping by 6 years. The endings for each character are very reminiscent of Twisted Metal Black, in that they are really fucked up. But the imp running for president is pretty damn hilarious.
Build that wall, 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 build that wall. You're fired.
Dragon Ball G...
Don't say those letters!
Why?
You know how theatre actors can't say the name of the Scottish play?
The Scottish play, don't you mean Macbeth?
Hot potato off of his drawers, pluck will make amends. Ow!
Sorry, I couldn't resist. But what does this have to do with the Scottish play?
Well, much like Macbeth with actors, if you mention the name of the very bad Dragon Ball series, it curses weebs.
The very bad Dragon Ball series. Don't you mean Dragon Ball GT?
Hot popo, Tori, Armour, Super will make amends.
Super didn't really make amends, did it?
No, it didn't, did it?
Dragon Ball GT Final Bout is every bit as bad as the very bad Dragon Ball series it's based on. This is honestly one of the worst fighting games I've ever played. I remember playing this with my stepbrother when we were kids, and he absolutely loved it and I hated it. Maybe he was just excited to finally have a Dragon Ball game to play. That's honestly the only explanation I can think of, because everything about this game just reeks of budget title. Look at this title screen. It looks like something you would get in a Midas Entertainment game, for fuck's sake. Even on the character select screen, it just looks like they've got all their text from clip art on Windows 98. But to give it some dues, there's a good selection of characters available. I mean, it has my homeboy Piccolo, and that's all you need really. But that's pretty much the only due I'm going to give this game, because the part that matters, the combat, is about as weak as Raditz.
I hate all of you.
Nothing feels smooth or enjoyable, and the hit detection is atrocious, and there's so little move variety that you'll feel like there's only 4 moves or so that you can pull off, and they all fucking suck. You can pull off special moves, but they're so boring and unreliable that you won't ever want to use them. You can fight in the air like they do in the show, which is cool, but it of course works about as well as the rest of the game. Sometimes the enemy will just fly off into the air and you'll be flailing around trying to hit them, which is annoying as fuck. But getting your character at the right level to hit the enemy when they're in the air isn't exactly the most easy thing. And another major annoyance is the size of some of the characters. There's a few short characters that are broken as fuck. If you fight these bastards with a normal sized character, your high attacks will sometimes hit them and sometimes not, which is of course annoying as fuck, because the small character can just fight like normal while you're trying to duck and hit them, which leaves you at a serious disadvantage. So basically there's no point in playing as any other character than the small characters. I got so sick of actually trying to play this broken piece of shit seriously, so I just decided to be a cheating cunt. I just started playing as young Goku, and I only used one move over and over again, a punch I like to call Dick Punch.
Weakness identified!
Hey, what are you...
And because the AI is, well, shit, I could get most of the enemies into an endless loop of dick punches.
He punched me in the dick! Why? Why did he punch me in the dick?
And they didn't seem to know how to handle this. And this got me all the way to the last boss of the arcade mode of this game, and I came up against Super Baby. Whatever the fuck that is. And this character is just the opposite of the small character's problem. He's so fucking big that you have to jump up to hit the fucker. And this character works in the same horrible janky way as all the other characters. But even he was no match for the dick punch. I just had to modify the dick punch into a flying dick punch. And boom, I beat the arcade mode once, and that was honestly enough for me.
Awful lot of dick in this game, isn't there?
I've snipped most of it out.
Oh, and the graphics look like gobshite, especially the backgrounds, and the music sounds like cheap MIDI music.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Sounds pretty great to me.
Have you lost your mind?
Yeah, but annoying you is getting me through this.
Dragon Ball GT.
Hop Poipoi Toriyama Super will make amends. Solar Flag!
Ah, you cunt!
Urkez, despite sounding like a German having a heart attack, is pretty unremarkable as a late 90s fighting game. It's very button mashy. You can get through the entire game with just one quick combo. Most of the stages are basically the same flat ring. The characters' designs are generic: guy robot arm, kung fu guy, wrestler bloke in speedo, ninja, boxer, police girl. Why am I even bothering with this one? Cloud Strife, Tifa Lockhart, Vincent Valentine, Yuffie Kisaragi, Zack Flair, Bootleg Rec 13... A full 3D fighter with iconic Final Fantasy VII characters released only a year after FF7 went Super Ultra Mega Omega Super Saiyan 3 Quintuple Platinum and forever changed the West's opinion on ridiculously hairstyled teenagers trying to save the world. No wonder it sold over 250,000 copies in Japan alone. Urkez was released during the very height of FF7 fever, and Squaresoft knew Cloud & Company would be the main reason anyone bought this game. Thus began Square's long and sordid history of whoring out their most beloved. Much like your mum. In the game, the FF7 characters are massively overpowered, unhinging an already unbalanced system. Except Yuffie. She still sucks as much as she did in FF7. Square got Dream Factory to make Urkez, bringing their experience from the Tobal series, which Jake covered in the last video in this series. And like Tobal, things are weird. Not in the game itself, but in the design choices. I mean, just look at this main menu. What the hell is this? The game you bought is in the top left, there's a bunch of mini-games in the bottom left, and the top right is apparently a completely different game altogether. This is brand new Quest the Forsaken Dungeon. It's a top-down hack and slash RPG. Excuse me, waiter, there's an RPG in my fighter. Unlike Topal number 1, however, this quest mode has its own control system, so it doesn't suck complete donkey dick. No, we are not doing a skit of that. Forsaken Dungeon is very Diablo-like. You go through various levels of the dungeon, kill bastards, steal their stuff, sell it to the locals who are presumably terrified of you, rinse, repeat, tedium. Also, there's material because Final Fantasy. No revive material though. You die in the dungeon and the secondary character, who you've never played as and so is level 1, must retrace your steps into the dungeon to retrieve your soul for resurrection back in town, as well as all your stuff. I'm reminded of Steiner from, appropriately enough, Final Fantasy IX. I never used him, so whenever the story forced me to, he was woefully underpowered and borderline useless. And if you die trying to grab your partner's presumably well-gnawed corpse, it's game over. By the way, the ending you'll get after playing for around 4 hours is a paragraph of white text on black background. Even the 80s had better endings than this, and they had less RAM than your mother's vibrator. Also, don't go down the town well or Cthulhu's ballsack will eat you.
Kensai Sacred Fist is basically Konami's attempt at making a Tekken or Dead or Alive styled game, and to be perfectly honest with you, they really haven't done a good job with this game. Everything about this game just feels bland. I mean, look at all these horribly boring character designs. No one stands out at all when you're trying to pick a character. You just don't want to play as anyone. When you look at the characters, you can tell most of them were just ripped off from pop culture and other fighting games. I mean, look, you've got Hugo, who looks like a mix of Kazuya and Jin from Tekken, and Douglas, who's definitely meant to be Steven Seagal. I mean, look at that guy. There's no way that isn't meant to be Steven Seagal. And then you've got David, who's very obviously meant to be Indiana Jones. And you've got this guy whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, that's just literally Wang from Tekken 2.
What you laughing at?
You said Wang.
And while we're talking about the characters, why did they pick the most boring and uninspiring names possible? I mean, one of the characters is called Heinz, for fuck's sake. I can guess how they came up with that one.
Okay then.
And the blandness doesn't stop with the character designs, because the combat itself, while not quite as bad as the Dragon Ball game, isn't the best. It just feels slow and very unresponsive, and the move variety doesn't feel all that great, and you'll find yourself mainly only stuck with a few moves to use. It really does feel like you're just playing a shit Poundland version of Tekken. My favourite thing about the combat is the move that happens when you try to walk over a downed enemy. You just sort of step on them. I don't know why I like this so much, I just find it funny for whatever reason. The game might have been more acceptable in a world without Tekken 3, making every other PS1 fighting game look bad. And this game released a few months after Tekken 3, so no wonder no one gives a shit about it. There's no interesting modes in this game. I mean, you don't even get a cutscene when you beat the fucking arcade mode. But I do like the amount of unlockable characters that are in this game, and it gave me a reason to actually bother to keep playing this game. And at the end of the day, the fighting is sluggish, the characters are boring and mostly rip-offs, and the funny thing is though, I didn't have an awful time playing this game. But I think that Dragon Ball game may have made this game look a little bit better.
The Japanese are insane. That is the impression they give the world from their game shows. There's a PS1 party fighter that has this exact same presentation. Poipoi. No, I don't know what that means either. You could translate to beef broth for all I know. In Beef Broth, you choose a contestant to play on what I'm presuming is a Japanese game show, but after Godzilla has stomped most of the country into a fine pace and the survivors need something to get their minds off things. By watching Final Fantasy Lego men beat each other to death with rocks and magic gloves.
Prepare the long rubber glove.
No! Said magic gloves allow you to imbue items with various special attacks, like bombs, homing missiles, teleportation, epileptic fits, and bullshit. Ow, ow. Poipoi plays like a cross between Bomberman and Super Smash Bros., which is actually pretty damn fun, even if there is nonsense like ducking to avoid high explosives. And these stage hazards, which range from psychotic penguins,
Nook motherfucker,
to living moai heads, to arsehole robots. You can, however, pick up other players and throw them around, including when they're dead. Yes, this game allows you to beat people to death with children's corpses. If this happens to you, however, the game keeps going. You can get revenge though. Hit X and circle over and over again to build up your glow power, and when it hits 100%, Catchy music though. Is it just me, or does Poipoi sound like something a Banjo-Kazooie character would say over and over again?
Poipoi?
Poipoi.
Poipoi, poi, 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 poi.
Poi. A little thing I love is when you win, the stage keeps going as your character's victory animation plays out. So often they can be in the middle of celebrating having survived a fight to the death when a dinosaur comes along and bites their arse off. After a round you get points which translate to
Cash prizes.
and whoever is in 4th place gets banished to the Phantom Zone. Japan! Well, when you've been isolated on an island for thousands of years, you're bound to come up with some weird shit.
Rather!
Indeed.
For sure.
Indubitably old bean. Also, is it me or is the host Kamina from Gurren Lagann's weird uncle or something?
I can't believe it!
Once again, Japan's game shows are weird. Blimey, who would willingly put themselves through that? Jake? Shall we move on, mate?
Yes!
Okay. Dead or Alive, aka Sarah G. Boobs, the game. Okay, this shit is ridiculous. These girls can knock themselves out by coughing. Yes, the series known today as basically softcore pornography started off as a pretty solid fighter with a gimmick that has now overshadowed it like a pair of Triple H cups. You can turn off the jelly boobs in the options menu. Jesus Christ, they even called it the bouncing breast option. But I can guarantee you that no one who bought this back in the day did this. Because Tecmo knew their audience was teenage boys, and a teenage boy's horniness is more powerful than the sun. And 0.001% as useful. We were going to put in a masturbation joke here, but the entire series is a massive wank fest anyway, so... It's such a shame that the trembling titties gimmick is in DOA. By the way, no, I'm not turning them off for this bit, because it is a good fighting game. The controls are responsive, the gameplay is balanced, there's a variant on the commonplace blocking with the offensive-defensive hold system, the graphics are much smoother than other PS1 fighters, and the game as a whole is easy to play, hard to master. It is a good game. They made a film of this! Seriously, she's just standing there. Was her mother a jello mould? 5-minute break?
5-minute break!
Anyway.
Well, there you have it. There's my second video on PS1 fighting games, and you never know, there might be a third video in the future. And I would like to thank my special guest Rog for appearing in this video. And I really hope you go check out his stuff. There will be links below the video and also at the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later.